My name is Lauren Hawkins, and we are at the House to Home at Chick Lumber in the test kitchen. We are cooking for Meet the Chefs today. We have the lovely chef Stephanie Adaska with us, doing a variety of Italian dishes, and we are super excited to see her. And we are here for the Home Garden Flower Show Mayfair, happening the 14th, 15th, and 16th this May. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to hand it over to you.
Rock on.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. So as Lauren had mentioned, we are doing a Meet the Chef series for the Home Garden Flower Show Mayfair. And tonight's menu, I'm creating a basic tomato sauce. I was kind of it's winter season and it's kind of like a homey dish, basic tomato sauce. But from that, I have 3 other very fast sauces that we can make as a result of creating the one base sauce. So I'm going to start. I have in my front pan here, now this is the first time today using this new stove in this lovely house to home kitchen, and so I'm getting used to the burners here. However, the basic dish starts with just olive oil, and then I have some garlic we're going to be sauteing up. We were hoping that this is a little hotter, so I'm cranking it up a bit. And as I mentioned, this is going to be the basic tomato sauce to start. And I had a little olive oil. While we're cooking that, we're also going to be starting with another sauce in the back. And I'm going to get that cranking as well. So I have a little olive oil, and that's going to be the bolognese sauce. And again, the base foundation sauces for all these sauces I'm making today starts with a basic tomato. So onions in the pan, and then we're going to add some fresh garlic. And I chopped up, I like a lot of garlic in my sauce. That's certainly a preference. Some people like garlic. It tends to be a little bit sharper than the onions, tend to be a little bit more mild. So we're going to saute that up. Once that comes up to become translucent, we're going to add some fresh chopped celery. And I minced this up pretty finely. I used my food processor today. I kind of cheated. We have some celery and some carrots. We have something beeping in the kitchen. I don't know what it is, but maybe the refrigerator's open? Thank you, Lauren. So Lauren's on top of things today. So sauteing up in the front pan the tomatoes, the tomato sauce. We have onions, carrots, garlic, and celery. And then, once it comes up, we're going to add some wine. I'm going to crank the heat up a little bit more. And in the back pan over here, or actually I guess technically in the front for you guys, I'm going to start with some pancetta bacon. I'm going to be doing multiple things, multitasking, because that's what moms do, and I'm a mom of 2 kids, so I'm pretty good at that. But also as a chef, you have to be good at multitasking. So I have some olive oil, and I'm going to put some pancetta bacon in there. And that pancetta bacon is just a bacon that comes from Italy. And it tends to be a little bit salty. Now, you can buy it, you can use regular bacon in the sauce, but the pancetta bacon just has a little bit different flavor. It's a different curing process. It's not smoked like an American bacon would be. So I can hear my back sauce here, the basic tomato sauce. The onions are getting a nice aroma. We're going to wait till they're translucent. And once that happens, then, and that's going to take a couple minutes for the onions to become translucent and to soften the carrots and the celery. And then I'm going to add some red wine. And now, as I'm doing this, you'll notice I'm not really using a recipe. I'm not measuring things. That's how I cook. But you will be able to find the recipes for all these items that I'm making today. You'll be able to find them on the homegardenflowershow.com. Is that correct? Yes, homeflowergardenshow.com. And they will be available for you to download and print off, and you can make them at home. I really suggest starting with a basic tomato sauce. What's nice, if you have a chance to go to a deli and you can maybe purchase some of these containers, I use these. I make a lot of sauce at once, whether it be a basic tomato or a basic marinara sauce, and I'll pour them in these containers when I'm done, and then I'll freeze them, just put a date on them and label them, and you can have them in your freezer for easy meals or just bases of sauces that you're going to make. So I'm going to add some wine to deglaze the pan. And I added probably about 1/3 of a cup of red wine to that dish. I'm also going to add bay leaf. I think I have bay leaves floating around here. I also am going to add some red pepper flakes. And I'm not going to add a lot. This is just a basic foundation sauce. So I'm not going to make it super spicy, but it will give it a little bit of flavor. I'm also going to add some fresh thyme. Now I'm going to take the thyme off these stems because I am going to end up pureeing this sauce at the end. And when you puree it, you got to make sure that there's no stems in it. You also want to make sure that you take out the bay leaves that you put in there. And I would say, thank you. I would say I'm probably putting a total amount of about a teaspoon of fresh thyme in here. And you could put the whole stem in there as long as you remember to take it out. Same with the bay leaves. And Lauren found those for me. I'm going to put 2 bay leaves in the sauce. Give it a quick stir. Now what I'm using for the tomato base, I have 2 items here. I have pureed Italian tomatoes. These are strained pureed tomatoes. And then I also have some whole tomatoes that I've crushed up. I buy the San Marzano. It's not a brand, but it's actually a tomato from a specific region, the San Marzano region in Italy. It's kind of where the Italy is like a boot. It's actually kind of where the ankle is. And that territory makes these wonderful, sweet, rich tomatoes. And they're very well known by chefs and used frequently by chefs, but they're available at your local grocery stores as well. And they just they have a nice thin skin, and they have a really rich, sweet flavor. So we have the pureed tomatoes, and then we also have the plum whole tomatoes, which what I've done is I took them out of the can. You can use a food mill to puree them up a little bit. I just pour them in a big bowl. I like to get my hands dirty, as you've probably seen me if you've watched my show before, or any of cooking shows I've done, is I like to get my hands dirty. So I just kind of squeeze them in my hand, and they make a big mess, but it's a lot of fun. Or you get the kids to do it. They have a lot of fun doing that too. And those are 2 28-ounce cans. And so we're going to let this come up to a boil, and then we're going to let it simmer. So I've added the thyme. I'm going to add a little bit of oregano. I'm going to add a little bit of fresh chopped basil. And we're going to let that come up to a simmer. And you're going to cook this for about 30 to 40 minutes or so. And the flavors are going to meld all together. I haven't added any salt yet. I'm going to add a little bit of pepper. And thank you, my former chef that was at the other show left this here for me because I left my black pepper at home. And then I have fresh sea salt as well. You can add a pinch of sugar to your sauce if you like. Some people like to do that. I find that the San Marzano tomatoes tend to be sweet enough, and they have a full flavor that you really don't need the sugar. But sometimes you may, so you can taste it. You can add a pinch of sugar if it's too acidic for you. Also, I find what is a nice touch, instead of sugar, if you don't want to add sugar, just add maybe a little tablespoon or 2 teaspoons of butter, and that also helps round out the flavor for a nice tomato sauce. So once this is cooked, we're going to make sure that we take out the stems, if there are any, and any bay leaves. And what we're going to do is we're going to take an immersion blender like this, and you're going to puree the sauce until it's a nice consistency. If you don't have an immersion blender, you can certainly run the sauce through a food mill. You can also use a blender. If you have a blender at home, what I would suggest, because generally it's hot when you're using it, is do it in, if your blender's this tall, only fill it about halfway and make sure that you have a vent on top. So if your blender top has a little detachable holder, you want to go ahead and take that off. Because you don't want the steam to blow up in your face. And also put a towel over it just in case, and just do it in different batches. So what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a lovely tomato sauce here, which I made earlier. And this is one that I've made earlier this afternoon. It's still nice and warm. And we're going to use this as the base for our other sauces. Let's go back to the bolognese sauce. So we have the pancetta bacon that is rendering, and what's happening is the fat is melting out of that. And you're going to want to cook it for probably, I'd say about 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes on a medium-high heat. Again, I'm new to this stove, so I'm getting used to it. So we're going to cook that off. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add some wine. Now in this particular dish, white wine, I had some white wine laying around here. I think I'm going to have to steal some from the kitchen here. We're going to add a little white wine to the dish. Deglaze the pan. I brought my own, but I don't know where I put it. So thankfully, the house to home people have some wine in their refrigerator. People just like us, they cook with wine, they eat with wine, drink wine. So we have some white wine in there. We're going to also add some thyme, about 2 sprigs of thyme. What's going to happen when the sauce cooks, it's naturally going to, the little leaves are going to fall off of it, so you don't have to worry about destemming it like you may with some other dishes. I'm going to turn this front one down. So after we have that cooking, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some carrots, celery, and onion, also known a French term mirepoix, which is a traditional foundation for many sauces, both French, Italian, American as well. So we're going to cook up these onions. And they're going to soften. In this dish, we're also going to add a little bit of garlic, which I have fresh minced garlic here. And there I add about a tablespoon. This dish also calls for some sage. And I have sage that I grow at my house, and then I dry it. So I just have the whole leaves here. And there's some stems. But what I'm going to do is it's dried, so I'm just going to rub it between my fingers and put it right in the dish there. And while that's cooking and the onions are going to get nice and soft, we're going to add the rest of the mirepoix, which is the carrots and celery. And you can use a box grater. You can do a fine mince if you want. I just happen to use the food processor because it was nice and easy, and I had lots of things I had to make today with it. So it makes it easy, easy peasy. So once the carrots and the celery get nice and soft, the next item up for bid is we're going to add our ground meat. I have about a pound of ground pork, and then I also have about 1.5 pounds of ground beef. This looks like closer to 2 pounds, but we'll pretend that it's about 1.5 pounds. And we're going to cook that up. And anytime you're touching raw meat, you need to wash your hands. Hot soapy water, very important. All right. So that is cooking there. That is the meat dish, the bolognese. So that's going to cook. We're going to move this to the front. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start a super easy sauce. And the foundation of the sauce, or one of the main ingredients, is the tomato sauce that we just made earlier, which takes literally probably about 8 to 10 minutes to prep and get to the point where you just have to kind of set it, forget it, put it on low for a half hour, 40 minutes. You can also make that ahead of time, put it in your freezer and take it out, serve it over fresh pasta, do a chicken parm, whatever you want, but it's also ready and available in your freezer just to create other basic sauces. So one of the sauces, we're going to make a vodka sauce, a vodka cream sauce. Super easy. I'm going to take about 2 ladlefuls of the tomato. And then I'm going to have my vodka. Now, what did I do with my vodka? I was smart and I put it in a glass so I wouldn't forget. So I have 2 ladlefuls of this, of the tomato sauce. Then I'm also putting in some vodka. And I put about 1/2 cup. Oops, we don't want to waste that. I almost poured it down the drain. We don't do that in my house. No wasting of the booze. So we have vodka, tomato. Now I'm going to add some fresh basil. And this sauce is so easy to make. 3 or 4 ingredients, and then it's done. So black pepper, add a little bit of of salt, and then we're going to add some heavy cream. Now I added about a half a cup of the vodka, so I'm going to add about a half a cup of the heavy cream, and we're just going to let this simmer. And I suggest not having the cream when you're adding it, to make sure it's at room temperature, or you can even heat it up before you put it in, so it's not shocking, you know, hot sauce mixing with a cold sauce. And we're going to bring that up to temperature, and then it's going to simmer down a little bit, and the sauce is going to reduce, it's going to thicken a little bit, and it's also going to intensify, and the flavors are all going to marry together. So while that's cooking in the background, see, we got so many things going on here. We're going to turn that on, and then next sauce we're going to make is going to be a puttanesca sauce. Puttanesca sauce was basically invented by mistake, from what the story goes, and there's a couple different stories about it, but basically back in Italy there was, well, I'm sure there's more than one brothel, but one specific brothel it was getting late, and their patrons were hungry and they wanted some food, and the owner of the brothel said, well, you know what, we don't have any food left, we're closed, the kitchen's closed. And I guess the patrons were a little upset, and they wanted something to eat because they were busy doing what they do at a brothel. So the chef basically the owner took a bunch of ingredients, simple dish, what he had in the kitchen, and the puttanesca sauce is a little bit spicy and kind of a hot sauce, and that's how the puttanesca sauce came about. Starting off in my pan, we have a little bit of olive oil. And then we have anchovy. Now I'm using the anchovy paste, which you can buy anchovy paste in the refrigerator section of a grocery store. You can also buy little cans of anchovies. Because I don't use anchovies that often, I tend to buy the paste. It lasts a long time. I use it in Caesar salads and to enhance other sauces. A lot of people hear the word anchovy and they get nervous. Don't worry about scaring, don't even tell your friends that you're putting it in the sauce. They'll never know. All it does is adds a beautiful salty umami flavor that people were going to wonder what's in it, but they're not going to know because you're not going to tell them that it's anchovy, because people get freaked out by it. But it's really not a bad thing. So anchovy paste it's really squishy and mushy. If you use a whole anchovy, they're basically going to dissolve into your sauce, and you're never going to know that it's in there, other than the beautiful flavor that comes along with it. So I'm going to steal this spoon. So the puttanesca sauce, like I said, it does have a little bit of fiery, a little bit of heat to it. That doesn't come from the anchovies, but what we're doing is we're melting down the anchovy until it kind of melts into the fat that we're cooking with. After that, we're going to add some red pepper flakes. This is where the spice comes in. We're going to use, and I'm going to say probably a good 3/4 of a teaspoon, a half a teaspoon in here. And we're actually going to cook that in the fat with the anchovy. Okay, so that's kind of sizzling up. Now we have garlic. Now, one of the main ingredients in a puttanesca sauce are a very strong amount of garlic. These gentlemen were hungry. It was late at night. They liked a hearty meal, and they liked the flavor of garlic. They didn't have to worry about their breath at that point because their work was done. So the garlic is sauteing up there in the oil with the fish. We're going to add, after that renders a little bit and the garlic softens, we're going to add some fresh, or some of the tomato sauce that we made. Again, this is the base sauce, super, super easy sauce to make. And Stephanie just made a big mess. Don't do what I just did in the kitchen. It happens. So like the vodka sauce that we made, generally you're going to let it cook for not a long time, but a good 20 minutes or so to let all the flavors merge together. In addition to the ingredients that we've added thus far, we're going to add Kalamata olives. These are going to add a nice amount of saltiness to your dish as well. The anchovy is going to add a little bit of salt. There's also, because these are in a brine, the Kalamata olives, you can leave them whole, so that way they're easy for people to come, pick them out if they don't like olives, or you can cut them in half like here. You can slice them up, whatever rocks your boat. In addition to black olives, we also have, we're adding some capers. And capers are also cured in a brine, which has a lot of salt. So one of the things you're not going to do is add too much salt to this dish. You're probably going to want to taste it before you decide to salt or pepper it. Again, because we added the red pepper flakes earlier on. So I added probably about 2 tablespoons of the capers. And one thing I did forget to add to this dish early on, normally I would add it to the garlic after the garlic is sauteed, is some red wine. So I'm going to add it now because I can. But you don't have to if you don't want to. Just adds another layer of flavor. And then we're going to finish the sauce with some basil. Now I'm making these sauces kind of quickly, but the recipes that I'll provide on the website, homegardenflowershow.com, will have the specific amounts of ingredients and also the times to cook, but because of television purposes, we're making them kind of quickly here. So then the next project we're going to do is we're going to plate up. Now, I'm the kind of person that when I'm cooking with pasta, and everybody has their own way of doing it, I tend to take a bowl of pasta that I've cooked, and then I'll pour the sauce on top of it, and I'll toss it together, and then I'll put it back in a bowl. So everything has, a coating on it. Some people, like my brother-in-law, and he's, diehard Italian, he swears, no, you don't do that. You put the sauce on top. So in honor of my brother-in-law, Jack, in New Jersey, I'm just going to put it right on top of the pasta. And here we have a rigatoni. These are kind of short rigatoni. Okay. We're going to get that out of the way. Then we have our other sauce over here. We have the vodka sauce. Now, I didn't taste this. Normally, I would actually give it a taste before I put it out to my guests and taste it, season it for salt and pepper. Again, probably is not going to need salt because of the many salty, briny ingredients that went in there. Same with this dish here. I'm going to toss up this. This is a vodka sauce. And again, the vodka sauce, you're going to want to let simmer the flavors. The alcohol, the vodka is actually going to evaporate the alcohol from it, but you'll still get a little bit of that flavor. And I just want to taste it and see if it needs any salt or pepper. Definitely needs a little bit of salt. And also I'm going to add some black pepper to it as well. Let's turn the back left off. I will get the system down one of these days. I'm just going to give this a quick stir. Now, normally, again, I would let this cook a little bit longer. You can still taste the alcohol a little bit in it, but for the purpose of television, we're going to dress. This is a farfalle. You can really use any kind of pastas that you prefer. Really just depends on your taste buds. I cooked the pasta ahead of time, just so you guys didn't have to watch me boil water, And then we're going to top the pastas with some fresh Parmigiano Reggiano. See how that melts right in there. And then you'd also serve a little bit extra on the side for your guests who might want a little bit more. And then here I'm also going to put some Parmesan. These are just nice Parmesan flakes. You can garnish with fresh parsley, fresh basil, whatever you like. And voila, we have 2 dishes that are ready for you. Now let's go back to our bolognese sauce. We're cooking the meat down. Did we ever figure out what that beeping noise is? Is it me?
It's a timer.
Oh, I didn't know.
Set a timer on the stove.
Who put a timer on the stove? Oh, I guess we figured that one out. Thank you, Lauren. So this meat, normally you're going to let the meat completely become cooked all the way through. We already added our wine. So next phase, after we add the beef and it's all cooked, pretend it's all cooked here, we're going to add about a cup of beef stock. Now you can use the bouillon cubes and you can dilute those. I find that they're kind of a little fake flavored, have a lot of sodium in them. You can get more natural beef broth or beef stock out of a can or the box stuff, which is real nice too. And you can also get the low sodium, so you can control how much salt that you're putting into your dish. And basically what you're going to do with the beef broth is you want it to, you're basically going to have it evaporate into the dish. And what's happening is we're adding layers of flavor here. You add one, you add the wine, you let it reduce, you add your meat, you're going to cook it, then you're going to add your beef broth and you're going to let it reduce. And all those flavors are intensifying and marrying together. So after that, we're going to add our tomato. And voila, we have tomato sauce already made for us. Again, the base sauce. And we're going to add about 2 ladlefuls of this sauce. And yes, I could have used a larger pan, but we're running a little short here. So once we have the tomato sauces added, and you're going to let some of that liquid reduce. And the last step in this dish, I guess we have 2 more steps. One is adding the milk, and I know it sounds kind of weird that you're adding milk to a red, a sauce with chicken, or excuse me, with beef in it, but it really balances out the flavors. It adds a nice richness to this particular dish. And we're also going to add some nutmeg. I know I saw it. Oh, here we go. I only use fresh nutmeg. You can buy a jar of nutmeg. I'd recommend, if you're going to buy nutmeg, buy it at a grocery store where you can buy it in bulk, so you don't have to buy a whole bunch of it, because these little nuggets last a very long time. If you're like me and you're a chef and you cook frequently and you make a lot of various sauces, you tend to use a lot of nutmeg, or not a lot, but use nutmeg in cream-based sauces. And although there is a little bit of milk in here, it just adds a nice flavor to it. And so we're going to add, and I'm using a microplane here, and we're just going to add probably about a half a teaspoon. You don't want to overdo the nutmeg. Nutmeg can have a very soapy taste to it if you put too much in it. A lot of people are afraid to use it, but it really does add a unique warmth to your dish, but you can overdo it and you don't want to do so. I've also read that too much nutmeg, if you probably have to shred 3 of these and down it, but it actually can kill you. But don't worry about that. You're not going to want to put that much of it at home. And again, the final thing here is we're adding some milk. And you want to use like a 2% or whole milk to the final dish. And basically, you're not adding it all at once. We're adding just a tablespoon at a time. And again, this is also at room temperature, because you're putting into a hot dish. You want to add a room temperature, or at least a semi-warm milk to it. If you add cold, it's just going to mess up the temperature structure of this dish. So that is your dish here. This is the bolognese sauce. Really, when you're making it at home, it takes a little bit longer than I've done here, because I'm rushing it a little bit. But what you get at the end of the dish is a lovely, warm, delicious meat sauce that you also can freeze at home. The bolognese sauce is it's just a hearty, rich, and kind of a uniqueness. And I think the milk and the nutmeg just changes the components. Then, if you're making like a meatball, a meat sauce, a basic meat sauce, or having meatballs or something. This just has a little bit different flavor profile. So I'm trying to turn all these things off. I was gonna do some other kind of pasta, but I think we'll finish it off here. And again, it's your choice if you want to toss the pasta with the sauce, or you can just serve it like my brother-in-law Jack. And then we also will serve this dish with a nice heaping topping of Parmesan cheese. So, 4 sauces: basic tomato, the puttanesca, the vodka basil, it's like a vodka basil cream sauce, and then we have the lovely bolognese sauce. Goes great with a glass of red wine. Serve it with a white wine if you prefer. I'd like to thank the House to Home, who is a sponsor of the Home Flower Garden Show. They've let us use this kitchen. I made a big mess of it, and now I got to clean it up. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's recipes. Make sure that you check out House to Home by Chick Lumber, and that is their website. Also, you can come by